All right. Good morning, everyone. How you doing? Good. All right. After last week, you came back, so you must have learned something. Today's going to be a great day, and I'm excited for you to be here, and I think you're going to learn some stuff, so get ready. Buckle in. When I was a boy with my brothers, we would go exploring a lot. And I lived on a farm in North Carolina, and literally we were a mile from the nearest neighbor. And so much of the farm, even though there was a lot of like pasture lands and everything, it was surrounded by woods, especially right behind our farmhouse. There was this steep incline. And I was about 4 years old. You have to understand, I'm like 4 or 5. You can just picture a kid that small. And we used to go down in that down by that back hill and woods. You would climb all the way down, go down, and then there was a creek at the bottom. That's what we called it in North Carolina, a stream, whatever you want to call it. But there was a creek there, and we would hunt for crayfish, crawfish, crawdads, whatever you want to call them. I even looked for this message. I actually looked up what they call them in different regions of the country. I hope that covered it for you. But that's that little crayfish, that little thing. And so on Easter, the joy and surprise when we got our Easter baskets, and all of us got a cooking spoon. No, not for cooking. We were actually excited because it was to catch crawfish. That was to use to scoop them up, And I'm like, you're like a cooking spoon. But we were super excited. And so we would keep going, exploring. One day, we're down by the creek, and I'm there close to my brother, Michael. Michael is only 2 years older than I am, so he's probably, if I'm 4 or 5, he's 6 or 7, not that old. Maybe as old as my daughter, Charlotte, that range. And we're hunting, we're doing different things. And, we got distracted and just started wandering along the creek. And we come up to this one spot, and we see this hole in the bank of the creek. And this is it's almost like it was a dream because it's so weird, but I actually had to look it up to make sure that sometimes this occurs. He looks in, because we're explorers, right, at this time. He looks in, and he says, honey. He actually saw honey in the hole. And so he reaches in to grab the honey. Yeah. And I'm right here next to him. So he's here, and I'm here, and we're both like this, right, waiting to see what's going to come out. He pulls out his hand, and it's covered in bees, okay? The next thing you know, there is a cloud of bees surrounding us. All you could hear is screaming and yelling, and we just started taking off up that incline, yelling, screaming, swatting, going like this, trying to avoid stuff as we're climbing over the rubble. We made it up to the top, and I think eventually they left us alone. But literally, my brother Michael, because he had reached in, had somewhere between 50 and 100 bee stings on him. I don't even remember how many, 15 or 20, and we're just covered in them. Can you imagine as our parents came to see us and we come screaming, got these, bites all over us, right? It's crazy. Moms you must be thinking, if you thought about your 4-year or 5-year-old boy and go, just with one sting, you'd be like, oh my gosh, what did you do? They're freaking out, right? All the moms are freaking out in here. Moms, you probably think sometimes your sons are crazy, right? And I'm sure if you got up here, you could tell some stories of the crazy things that your son did when they were little. They do daring things. They hit things. They climb things, right? You see them climbing. You walk outside, and they're way up here. They always want to climb up that ladder. They want to climb that tree. They're rough with other boys. They do weird things, right? They grab heavy objects. They just do stuff that will end up hurting them, you're thinking, as you watch boys, right? And why do they attempt to do these seemingly life-threatening, foolish things? And we wonder, right? Where does this come from? And then you look at your husband, and you wonder, why does he still do foolish, life-threatening things, right? When you grow up, you're like, he does the strangest stuff. He climbs up on the ladder to clean off the eave trough. Those little troughs where all the eaves get covered. You've seen him do that, and you're like, honey, be careful. They come out, right? You're like, shouldn't we just pay somebody to do it? And the husband's like, no, I got this, right? And the women are looking on at the men, watching them do things that they would never do, and they're worried about it. They do these crazy things. They take risky investments, right? They're like, man, I don't know. And the guy's like, no, let's do it, honey. Baby, we're going to try this. Or they play rough with their sports buddies, and you're like, man, you guys are just crazy. I know this. When I come home, my kids want to wrestle. All right? Yes, I do have 2 girls, okay? And they wrestle. We get on that bed, and we wrestle, especially Woody, and he's there pounding as hard as he can. He's like, look at me, Daddy, and he's doing all this stuff. And my wife, though, she won't get on the wrestling bed. We go right in my room, the king bed. She's like, no, I don't do that. I'm like, honey, you'll bond with us. Come in. She goes, no, I'm sorry. I am a delicate flower. okay? And probably like, yeah, I'm a delicate flower. I don't want to be there, right? Treat me nice. She doesn't want to be a part of the wrestling pile. And someday as my girls grow up, they're probably not going to want to be a part of the wrestling pile, okay? So it's going to be me and my son, him like hitting me, Charlie horse, noogie, something like that, right? The older kids get, the more it becomes clear that boys and girls are different, right? Their bodies change, their interests change. Girls seem to grow up and become more mature and more serious about life. But the guys, they seem to be still doing those crazy things. Why? Why do they do that? It's these differences that sometimes make our marriages and our partners seem so hard to understand, right? And maybe you were thinking some things when I was talking about something about your husband had done, and you're just like, I don't know why he does this. I don't know why he tried that. I can't believe this, right? And we can't understand it. But what if we could understand them a little bit better? What if there was actually a reason behind the behaviors that we find so strange in our partners? What if there was a way to bridge the gender gap? And that's really what our series is all about, to become one, how God makes the impossible possible. So this is obviously a series on relationships and marriage, and we're going to discover that there is a way to understand your spouse, to understand the opposite sex. And we'll understand a little bit more about God's plan for marriage and how to find God's best in our relationships. God puts two people together that are very different. We shared this verse last week, but I'm going to share it again because it's kind of the theme really for our whole series. And that is, therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. He joins these two people that come from the opposite sides of the world, basically these opposite planets, and he brings them together and he says, okay, be one. It's like, okay, God, we'll try. And somehow, through all of this, we were meant for each other. Somehow you were meant for your wife, and your wife was meant for you, even through all of the misunderstandings and all the craziness that happens. Last week, we talked about the one question that every woman is asking. And we also talked about her core relationship need. If you missed it last week, listen, go on YouTube, look up Faith Generation, the channel, start listening to it, or go to our website. There's a link there. You want to listen to it, because today is going to sound a little one-sided if you only listen to this message, because today we're talking about the men. And if you can understand more about ourselves and more about our partners, then honestly, there's hope, right? If I can understand my wife better, then I'm going to be able to understand why she does what she does, and she's going to understand me more, and I might even learn a bit about myself to understand why I do the things that I do, and we can have a better relationship. There's hope for you today. I want you to know if you're struggling in your relationship. And for those who feel like they kind of have a good relationship, there's always room for improvement, right? I love my wife, and I think we got a great marriage, but I also know, and she would probably tell me, yeah, there's room for improvement, John, okay? So this is good for all of us. The more you know and understand your spouse, the better you're equipped to make them feel wanted and loved and valued, to deal with conflict when it arises in your relationship, to make sense of those moments that just don't seem to make sense that you're in, and to improve the quality of our marriage and our relationship. So ladies, we're going to talk about the men today. And if you were here last week, I said there was a lot of great feedback and a lot of nodding of heads. And you were like, man, I'm so glad you said that, because I wanted this for my husband to understand it, right? And you were like, I'm so glad that you did it. Now, I want you to know that we're going to share some stuff about your husband today, some stuff that they want you to know that maybe they don't know how to tell you. Because what I shared last week, you were probably thinking, yeah, I just don't know how to explain it to him. But you did a good job at least starting the conversation. And so today it's the opposite for you. So I want you to know, as enthusiastic as you were about hearing that, I want you to embrace the things that you're going to hear today about your men. Because you might be thinking, really? This doesn't sound like, this is like childish, or this is something I don't deal with. Of course you don't deal with it. You're not the same sex, and it's the same thing that happened last week. So I just want you to keep an open mind and open heart. So you guys ready today? All right, good. So we're going to start with this. We're going to check out this video right here.
Laundry detergent?
No! I don't know, ladies, if that scene looks familiar to you, but every time you can stop that. But every time I see, my wife comes home with the groceries, this is what I see. This is my point of view. I'm like, can I grab them all? Sometimes I don't just because we got kids coming to do it. But there's this challenge that every man wants to bring in every single grocery, right, guys? Anyone want to raise their hand and admit that that's you? I see a lot of hands, okay? There was a few ladies. Okay, that's cool. But why do we want to bring them in all at once? Why is that? I know that that's me. Because he's driven to answer a question that burns in his heart. So guys, grab your notes right now. I want you to pull them out. If you follow along, it's going to help the message stick. But you can also, there's a couple fill-ins that I want you to know. And that's this. There's a question the man asks his whole life, and that is this. Do I have what it takes? Do I have what it takes? So he's looking at all those groceries, and he's like challenging himself. Do I have what it takes to take them all in on one trip? Right? And there's a perfect video for it. And this list, by the way, this question goes all the way back to the first job that a man ever had. And it was given to him by God. When God created man, the first thing he did was give him a job. Look in your outlines or on the screen right here. There's a verse. One more, next verse. There you go. It says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And when God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish in the sea, over the birds of the air, over every living thing that moves on the earth. And he also told him to tend the garden that was there. God gave man a job right away. And when he did, he began to see himself as someone who has a mission. This mission has been seared into his heart from the first day of creation, that man has these challenges. He is always wondering, and it drives him every single day to answer this one question, do I have what it takes? A man is always thinking this. If you have little boys or teenagers, you've seen it, right? And as they grow, it even becomes more apparent. My son, Woody, man, he always wants to grab the hammer. He wants to get involved, get right in the middle of it. He wants to do it. They're always sizing themselves up against everything. Like as the teenager gets a little bit older, he comes up to the dad and he starts puffing up his chest and he's like, I think I'm bigger than you, right? You ever see, if you're a mom and your boy grew up, he walks up to the mom and he's always like looking to see if he's taller, isn't he? Right? He's always doing these things. He wants to know if he's bigger than his brothers or his fathers or he can do things better. He wants to know if he can move a rock. Do you ever see him try to just move a heavy object? There's like, oh, I think I can do it. And you're like, why don't you just like get some help? And they're like, no, because he wants to know, can I do it? Can I do it? Because he's trying to answer this question. They climb fences. They climb trees because they want to know, can I do this? Do I have what it takes? And asking this question will surface, by the way, on every challenge that a man faces. He'll be asking this question when it comes to the minor and even the big responsibilities in life. This question will continue to pop up in most areas of his life, in every area, in most important areas. He'll ask the question, do I have what it takes to get this job? Do I have what it takes to make it on my own? Do I have what it takes to get the girl's heart? Do I have what it takes to fulfill my purpose and my dream? A man will ask this question his whole life. It's automatic, and he does it without even noticing it. And some of the guys here are thinking, maybe a little light is going on, and maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. That does happen, because I notice once I realize this, I do it all the time. It's constant. Ladies, I wish I could say that you could answer this question for him. Okay? But you can't. You can't answer it for him. The only way a man answers the question, do I have what it takes, is for him to attempt it or for him to try it. And that's why he does some of the things that he does. Even though you can't answer it, though, ladies, there is hope. You can help him answer it. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Before I do, I want to just take aside moms for a moment. I want to talk to moms. And we all know how important moms' relationships are with their boys and the bond that they have. It's different for my wife between her two daughters and her son. And she may not notice it, but I've seen it. And the reason is, you'll notice that dads always challenge sons, and moms always challenge daughters, don't they? But the daughters wrap their little, they wrap their little finger. How's it go? They got your little finger wrapped around, right? We're wrapped around their finger, right? Because we don't challenge the daughters. And the moms don't really challenge the sons all the times. There's a difference. I remember when I came home, from work, when we had our boy, when he was an infant. And I'd come home, and I'd go to the kitchen, and my wife's holding Woody, and she's trying to cook. And she's like, I'm sorry, I didn't get this done today, and I didn't get that done. I'm like, well, it's okay. And she's like, listen, Woody was just crying. And I'd pick him up. And I think to myself, you never did that with the daughters. I never had that moment with you. And I'm like, and I didn't say anything because I didn't want to rob her of that joy with her son, but it was like, she didn't do that. She treated him totally different. So when he would cry, oh, that's the way I'm with my daughters. When my son, when he cries, I'm like, stand up. All right, just stop crying. Let's just go, keep moving, right? I check to see if there's bleeding. With the girls, I'm like, oh, where does it hurt? Show Poppy. Oh, it's just different. It's different, and it's the same with moms. And here's the thing. They're going to love him in a special way, but moms can unintentionally do two things that don't help him to answer this question. And the first thing is they can tend to do everything for him. Because you love him, right? But it would be a tragedy if mom did everything for their son. You see, because he'll never find the answer to, do I have what it takes? You see, when your son is little, there are things that we have to do for him, okay? He can't do everything. But as he grows older, there needs to be a transition. And as it becomes appropriate, that we give him more and more things for him to do that he should do on his own. You see, because you, mom, if you answer the question for him, they aren't answering it. And this is what he's learned. If you do everything for him, this is all he learned. Mom has what it takes. That's what he's learned. He hasn't learned that he has what it takes, and he will become more and more dependent on his mom. We've seen it sometimes in our society, haven't we? Moms can tend to be sometimes very overprotective. That's the second thing. I remember this vision specifically, this memory. And our daughter Charlotte was maybe 2 or 3, okay? She could talk, but not a whole lot. And she was very active. And when we would go to the jungle gym, the playground with her, I would always let her do whatever she wanted. I would let her climb the ladder because I'm a dad. And I would just stand behind her and try not to even hold her to see if she could do it. So by the time she's 2 or 3, she's running all over the place. She's jumping. And there we go. Where I'm looking at this end of the jungle gym. There's a platform about this high and maybe 3 to 4 feet. And there's a little ladder going straight down. And this kid comes running up. He's about 6, maybe 7. He runs. And he stops. He's a couple years older than Charlotte. And because 2 moms yell out, no, stop. You're not allowed to do that. And here he is looking down like, I want to jump. You can see it written on his face, okay? And here comes little Charlotte right behind him. Stops, woo, jumps right off. The poor kid. And I'm thinking, moms, you need a dad right now. You need a dad. You need to let that kid jump. I'm thinking, and sometimes what we can do is become very overprotective of our sons because we're like, well, this is what I would do. And sometimes we can't think what I would do. We have to think something different. I remember growing up, for some reason, I had a fascination with football. And I'm not really built for it, as you can see, okay? And I was skinny when I was a kid, too. But I loved it. I think it was the pads and the idea you could hit other people and just get in there and be rough. And I wanted to play so badly, but my grandmother wouldn't let me play. And she wouldn't let me play because her son, my uncle, played, and he would get injured at times. She says, no, you're going to get injured. No, you can't do it. And I longed and longed to play. Just let me play. I really don't care if I get hurt. I want to play. I want to know if I can do it. Eventually, was able to play football. And I played in my last year in school, and I'll tell you what, I loved it. And I broke my finger, tore the tendon. Okay? And I don't care because I enjoyed it so much. Kids just want to do it. As scary as it is, moms, you got to let them play football. You got to let them roller skate. You got to let them climb that tree. You got to let them do those things sometimes and just trust. And I noticed my wife, it's hilarious. When we go and I let them climb trees, she comes out, what are they doing up in the tree? I'm like, don't worry about it. They fall, they'll be okay. They're not going to kill themselves. And I bet every mom here is thinking the same thing. If you walked outside and your 5-year-old kid's up in a tree 8 feet high, you're going to be scared to death. But all the men here are like, yeah, they're saying, how'd you get up there? Give me a fist bump, right? Because that's the way we think. When we do things, our intention, moms, is to communicate that we love them, okay? So I'm not saying that you do it for the wrong reasons, right? We love our kids. We love them. We're doing it for the right reasons. But sometimes we can communicate that we don't believe in them, and we don't even realize it. We're thinking, basically, they're seeing this. I don't believe you have what it takes, and that's why I have to do it for you. That's the unintentional messages that moms communicate to the children they love when they overdo it and when they're overprotective. Because they're like, you don't have what it takes. And if you keep answering that question for a child, when he keeps growing up, or a boy, and as he continues to grow, and you keep doing that, he'll get to a point where he may give up on life and say, listen, I don't have what it takes. And that's why we see some 30-something kids leaving at home, don't we? We're like, how did they get to this point where they're still living at home and they're not living on their own? Because they are still under the protection of those that have always protected them because they never got the answer to that question, or it was answered to them, you don't have what it takes. So there's some times we just got to let go. You got to let them do what they're going to do. Listen, what can you do as a mom for your child? Because I don't want to leave you there. What can you do to help them? Ask them to do stuff for you. When my wife asks Woody to do something for her, my son, or I even ask him, you should see him. Yeah, he wants to do it. He wants to get the tools. He just wants to help. Let him help. Tell him to do it. Ask him to do things for you, even if you can do it yourself. Because then when he does it, he's starting to get the answer to that question. I do have what it takes. So ask him to do stuff for you. The same is true, by the way, for your grown man in your life, okay? Because that's what this series is about. The relationships with our husbands and those significant others who are men in our lives. Listen, Solomon, the wisest person on the planet, whoever walked the planet, writes this. It's the glory of God to conceal things, but the glory of kings to search things out. This is the idea behind a man's heart. There might be things that are concealed, but we want to find out what they are. It's written on our hearts. He's adventurous. He tries crazy things. It's what drives a man to be a protector and a provider in the home. And that's a great thing, right? These are the qualities we love about men. So we don't want to stop them from happening because God created us as men to have those qualities in our lives. Men, we also, though, sometimes, this is an aside for the men, we also need to recognize this in our lives because it can actually be destructive. Because sometimes that idea drives us so much that we can become obsessed with it. It's why a man sometimes becomes a womanizer, right? I'm going to conquer and conquer and conquer all these women because he's still trying to answer the question, do I have what it takes? He might become a workaholic because he's trying to seek the answer to that question, do I have what it takes to succeed in the world, with the career world? Or he might be highly competitive because he's constantly trying to answer the question, do I have what it takes? He might obsessively pursue things, something or an object or a goal because he's seeking the answer to this question. But men, I want you to understand something. That will help working harder, and that's okay. I'm not saying never do that. But if we get to the point where it's obsessive, you're going to find something, you'll never get the answer. Because it's a question that's always on our hearts. Ladies, just like the question for you was, am I desirable? And you can never get it answered, right? Every single day it pops up again. It's the same thing for you men. No matter how much you accomplish, no matter how much you do, this question will always be there. I'm not saying don't accomplish, don't do, but also realize there should be a limit. And that's why Solomon also wrote this. It's in your outlines, but it's here on the screen. Go ahead, put up this verse. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. See, if we always lean on our understanding, what our heart is telling us, then it's probably going to lead us in the wrong direction. But he says, in all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Submit to God. So we have to recognize that there is a balance. But this nagging question, as I said, never leaves a man, and he's always wondering what it takes. That's what we'll always be wondering. Therefore, he has an underlying and constant feeling that he's not living up to whatever it is. And the truth is that every man, if we really would admit it to ourselves, that sometimes we feel like an imposter. I feel like an imposter, to be honest. Your pastor feels like an imposter. Every time I'm writing a message, I'm thinking like, oh man, this is no good. No, they're not going to, they're going to find out that like I'm just an ordinary guy, right? And I am, guys, just an ordinary guy. But this is in the back of my head. Here are people coming to listen to a message, to learn something, and you're delivering it, but I still like, oh my gosh, when they find out that I'm just a normal guy, they're going to realize I don't have what it takes. Craig Groeschel is the pastor of probably the largest church in America because of all their satellite campuses. It's called Life Church. And he's one of these great leadership, he has so much great leadership material. He does a podcast, he writes books. This guy is amazing. And he confesses all the time that he constantly doesn't feel like he should be in the place that he is in because he doesn't have what it takes. Guys, no matter where we're at, we're going to feel that way. And this is a little bit revealing. I just want you to know, so if you don't see a lot of guys shaking their heads or nodding, it's because we do feel that way inside. There is a feeling there, but we obviously don't want to admit it because it's embarrassing. You see, a man will look for those around us to give us clues to whether we're succeeding, whether we do have what it takes. And ladies, you're the primary person in our lives to help us do that. Do you realize that? When we're looking to you for you to say, yeah, I'm affirming that you do have what it takes. And sometimes we can kind of set a man up, ladies, without even realizing it, to have him question this area of our lives. Now, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but men hate it when you tell them how to drive. You ever notice that? I have noticed it, okay, because I hate it. I've noticed it in my own life. I'm like, I don't know why this is. And this is, by the way, this is an example, and we could extrapolate this to different areas. We're going to use one example because I'm not going to attack every area of our lives today, okay? But I noticed this, it became like a punctuation point in my life when I went driving with another friend of mine, and I was telling him where to go, where we were going to go, our destination, and I didn't know he knew the way, or if he knew the way, I didn't think he did. So as we're driving, I said to him, hey, his name was Tracy, by the way. I said, Tracy, could take a right up here on the right. And he goes, what, you don't think I know what I'm doing? You don't know how to drive? You sound like my wife. And I'm like, dude, I just didn't think you know where to go. That's all. And in my head, I went, whoa, really? Really? I'm just trying to help. This is like a small suggestion, dude. And then I looked at him, and I almost saw a mirror at that moment. And I'm like, man, that's me. That is me. I hate it when people tell me how to drive. I'm like, there's no brake on that side of the car, honey. There's no steering wheel over there. It's here. Let me do the driving. I'm here. And when you're here, you drive, and I'll let you drive, right? This is what we think. And here, let me clue you in, because ladies, you're thinking, you guys do have crazy reactions, right? Just as I saw my friend Tracy, I'm like, that is a crazy reaction. And here's what's happening, okay? You're just trying to help. That's what you're doing. You're like, I just want to help. But this is what he hears. You don't have what it takes to drive this car. It's true. And I don't even think that per se. It just bugs me inside. Like, she doesn't think I know. She doesn't think I know how to drive a car. Listen, when I got married, I'd been driving at least 10 to 20 years before I met you, right? I suddenly forgot how to drive, right? So the guy's like, you don't think I know? Okay, now just imagine the other areas of our lives. We're just using this one example. It's crazy, but it's true. Ladies, this is just surfaces inside of us, and we're not even trying. I don't want to pick a fight with my wife. I know that she loves me, but it just bothers me. And every time I hear Siri or GPS could have got me there sooner or quicker, all I hear is, I'm disappointed that you couldn't do it better. Like, really? Listen, this is why we get angry when you tell us how to drive. And this happens in other areas of our lives sometimes, okay? It just happens. And you're telling him that he doesn't have what it takes. Every time we're moving into that question, when he hasn't asked you for your advice, when he hasn't asked you, listen, can you help me here? Then sometimes us moving into that space can cause us to be communicating to him, you don't have what it takes. And it's hitting us right here at the heart, and we don't even realize that it just pops up. He hears the answers. You can't do it. That's why I have to do it for you. That's what he hears. Listen, you can't do it. That's why I have to tell you to take a left right now. You can't do it. That's why I have to tell you where to park the car, because you don't know how. Listen, just understand that this is what he's hearing, and this will help you, ladies, okay? Remember, I told you it might be difficult to embrace, but if you could understand this about the person in your life, is going to help you so much for this man. This happens in many areas, like I said. So what do you do? Okay, you're like, well, what do I do when he takes the wrong turn? What do I do in life and he's making a decision? I know it's not the right decision, but I can't see it, and if I jump in, he's going to get offended, right, ladies? Okay, you're wondering, what do I do? You want to know what to do? You let him fail. Let him fail. Yeah, but let the man fail. Because when you finally get to your destination, okay, he'll finally get there. He's going to figure it out, and if he can't, he'll end up asking you. But listen, when you get there, also don't say, I could have done it quicker, or I told you so. Just say, you know what? I knew you could do it. If you say that to a man when he's working to get the answer, man, he's going to look at you in a whole different way. You see, when we don't, we put the pressure on him to be even more perfect when he already feels like there is a gap right now because I'm an imposter. And the truth is, when you're driving, and I say this a lot, he really doesn't care how quickly he gets there. The man just wants to drive. That's it. And listen, if he wants your advice, he will ask you, trust me. And when he asks your advice, that's when you say, well, this is what I was thinking. That doesn't mean you can't always approach him about something, okay? Because we do have dysfunctional people in our lives, and sometimes we do have to enter into that conversation. But when you do it lightly. Prepare the man for what's about to happen. And you guys might think this is silly. Oh, this is childish. But I'm going to tell you something. The question that you have, ladies, on your mind, the man thinks the same thing about this that way. It's just the way we're wired. And it doesn't mean to belittle either side, okay? It just is, that's the way it is. And if we can embrace ourselves, embrace this truth, I'm telling you, it's going to help you so much. Ladies, now let me tell you how you can be important to answering this question in his life. You can believe in him. You can believe in your husband. You can encourage him. Be his biggest cheerleaders. Cheerleaders don't say, you can't do it. No, you can, right? They don't say that. They say, no, you can't. They say, you can do it. Yes, you can. even when he hasn't done it, right? When you're on the team as a cheerleader cheering because you've already won the game, no, they're cheerleading to boost you on, and that's what men need in their lives. What he needs to hear from you is you can do it. You can do it. I believe in you. If you believe in him, I'm telling you something, you'll have a man on your hands who feels like he can conquer the world. And that's what we want, isn't it? This question is linked also to his core relationship need. And so the core relationship need of a man is to feel respected. It's going to come up here, but in your outline, fill it out, is to feel respected. In the Bible, we talked about this verse last week, this area of Ephesians that's based on our marriages, and Paul is giving us instruction to help us have good marriages. And the instruction for the man last week was to love his wife, right? And so you would think that the instruction for the female is love him back, right? And we're waiting to hear this, but that's not what happens. That's not at all what happens. Listen to what he says. So again, I say each man must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. He doesn't say love her back. He says respect the husband. The instruction is to respect. See, Carol and I remember early on in our relationship, we were shopping. And we were at, I think, Macy's or something, and we were actually shopping for clothes for me, because as I was a pastor, I'm always wearing out my clothes, and so I'm searching for new shirts and stuff, and there we are looking in different sections. You know how they have it sectioned off, like you got Polo over here or whatever, and you got Calvin Klein over here, and there was a Sean John section, and I don't look like a Sean John type of guy, I know. But I thought, I'm going to go look. I have this thing that I've learned that there's always like one thing that you'll love, right? So I'm like, I'm going to go over there and find that one thing. So I'm going to go over there, and I start walking, and my wife goes, no, don't go over there. And I said, no, honey, I want to look over there. And she's like, no, you won't wear that stuff. Don't go over there. And I said, honey, I just want to go look over there. And she's like, no, don't go. And I'm like, come over here. And I'm like, this frustration and this anger just started to develop inside of me that I couldn't contain. I'm thinking, woman, what are you doing telling me in public what to do? Sorry, I don't mean it in the way like you can't speak into my life, but this thing was happening because she was like telling me this, and I said to her, honey, I just want to walk over here. Is that okay? No, we got to go this way. And I said, listen, honey, and these words just came out of my mouth. I said, I don't like the way you're treating me, and they just came out. I couldn't even help it. I said, I don't feel like you're respecting me. Like, I didn't think of those words. They just came out. And you've probably heard it from your husband or significant other at sometimes too. The word respect just comes out. And so it just popped out of there, right? And here's the reason why. I don't know why it is. I'm just going to tell you from my heart. What happens is that I feel like a little kid that needs to be instructed when my wife does that. And I'm like, I'm not a little kid that needs to be instructed. And there's something inside that rebels against it. Because it's this question and its need, it just goes bam. And you've probably wondered, husband, lovey, I don't know what you call him in a loving way, poopy, why are you getting so upset? Where's this action coming from, right? Because it just comes out from inside of us. We don't mean it. We don't want to, we're not trying to be angry at you. We just can't help it. We just can't help it, and it just comes. Now, not to say that all men are walking around like time bombs, okay? The more we understand who we are, recognize those things, and talk and communicate with our spouses, then the more we overcome those things in our lives. You see, this frustration will just happen. Inner Research, the book for women only. I think I may have missed this, but in your outlines, you'll see a book for women and a book for men. That book for women there, for women only, ladies, get this. It's an eye-opener for you. But Shaunti Feldhahn, who wrote it, she did thousands of surveys, surveyed men, tons of men, and she found this, that men felt that their opinions and decisions were valued in everywhere of their lives except for home. They felt that their colleagues at work seemed to trust their judgment more than their own wives did. I mean, can you imagine this, that their husband feels more welcome, more respected, and more valued in his job? Where do you think he wants to be? When he's out on the basketball field and the guys are like, yeah, you're awesome, you can dribble, you can shoot, you can do all this stuff, where do you think he wants to be? Ladies, sorry, it's getting silent here, but the point is, ladies, what we do in the home is so important to making him feel comfortable and affirming him in his life. One of man's great emotional needs is to feel competent and successful at what they do, especially in front of other people. Because if they feel like there's an imposter in there, and it might be a strong word for some of us, and maybe that is severe, but we're always feeling slightly inadequate, then what can happen is that they can have a deep conviction that what they do is always being watched and judged from everybody when they're out there. And this is the reason that they have sometimes an insecurity, and that's why, boom, the lion jumps out all of a sudden. Because he was feeling insecure, and we just kind of poked the lion right in the wrong spot, and he went, boom, all of a sudden, right? listen, they deeply want to succeed. And they don't want to feel that they're one mess up away from being found out. A man feeling respected and his life question are closely related, right? The man feeling respected and the question, just like the woman's was, right? Being loved and that she feels desirable. It's the same as for a man. And the idea of someone thinking that he can't cut it for a man is humiliating. It really is. They don't want people to think they can't cut it. We put up fronts all the time. We don't mean it. It's not like this huge ego. It's a fragile ego that's doing that sometimes. See, a feeling that a man wants to avoid this at all costs, and so this can happen. Wives can sometimes make husbands feel embarrassed or very uncomfortable at the least when sometimes we make fun of them in public, right? We're at a party, we're outside, and oh yeah, you should have seen how cute it was when he tried to fix that. You know, it is sometimes funny, right? But inside the man is dying. I'm just telling you what's happening. Really? I know it was hard. Yeah, I didn't get it, but like, really? We're communicating to the world that he doesn't have what it takes, and we're also communicating that our wives feel like he doesn't have what it takes. Think about that for a moment. It doesn't mean you can't joke about it, like talk to him beforehand, but think about it from this perspective, ladies. If you're out in public and the man he starts commenting about your appearance in front of everybody, how would you feel? This is kind of the same way he feels when we're starting to point out things in a public setting about his failures and his inadequacies when it comes to some of the things where he's trying to answer that question, do I have what it takes? How do you communicate to a man that you respect him, right? Because if you were a woman, right, it's kind of easy. I could say I love you, even though it's more than that. It's much greater than just saying I love you, but at least that communicates it. Do you say I respect you? Do you say I love you back? There is something you can say. And that's this, it's the last fill-in your outline, is this. Tell a man you love and respect him by saying thank you. That's not to say that we don't want to hear the word I love you, okay? There's like, oh, forget it. I'm never going to say I love you again because you just need to feel respected. No, we like that too, but this is actually sometimes almost more important to a man. To be thanked, to be recognized for what he's been doing. A man does a lot of things out of love for his wife. Ladies, you will never understand what goes through a man's head when he's doing things for you sometimes that you don't think he's doing for you. He goes out of his way. Sometimes he's at work working overtime because he's thinking, I need to earn money so that I can provide for my wife, so that we can go on that vacation, not just for him, but because he loves you, because he wants to do those things for you. And when a woman stops to notice and affirm him, you may be thinking, well, he should do those things anyway, but he wants to hear that. I remember this. My uncle would say this all the time. And you know, when you're growing up, things stand out to you. And my uncle would always say this about somebody. They didn't even say thank you for that. Your brothers didn't even say thank you for that. And I'm like, that would always register to my head. And I'm thinking, maybe, do they need to? You know, but then I'm thinking, and then I looked at him and I thought, once again, the mirror. Because when I do something for somebody, I don't want a parade, but sometimes just the gratitude and the recognition, you did it. It's very important for a man. You may not think it is, but saying thank you makes a huge difference. I used to be very sparing with compliments because I'm the type of person that sees the one flaw, right? It's like somebody's cleaned this giant plate glass window, and over here, way up near the top, I see one speck. And instead of going, wow, you worked so hard, I go, hey, there's a speck you missed up there. Right? You ever get any of those people? That's me, okay? That I have to fight. I don't know why, it just doesn't come as natural to me. I notice the problem. And so when I come up to somebody, I don't notice that they spent an hour working on this. I didn't notice that they're sweating right now, that they paid extra, they spent extra time doing it. I just noticed the flaw. And so for me, I have to go out of my way to make sure that I compliment and notice. Guys, ladies, this is what we sometimes have to do, even though it may not be in our nature. My friend Rob, he was a coach for kids and his children, and I would go and watch their games all the time, and afterward we'd talk about what happened on the field with his wife and everything on the hockey rink, and then Rob would say to me, when we got to the back room, the locker room, he says, we would debrief. And he goes, but this is I don't know why he shared this with me, but I never forgot. He goes, but the first thing I do is I find a way to compliment every single kid on the team first, before I then tell them what's wrong. And I thought, man, that is a great way of looking at life. And I've tried to do that all the time now. I'm going to compliment first, and then I'm going to come in with the issue that needs to be dealt with. And so when you recognize what your husband does, man, it's going to go a long, long way. They deeply feel loved when that happens. They deeply feel noticed and appreciated for what is going on the outside. Listen, there are things you can do that you don't just have to say thank you. You can say, you did a great job today at whatever it was. I love the way you handled this. You're such a great dad. I'll be honest, my wife is great at this. My wife does so much to uplift me. There are times that she just comes home and she just say, you know what? I love the way you are with our kids. I love the way you do this. And inside of me, I'm like, oh, that feels so good. That feels so good. It just builds me up. In her survey, I want you to know this, 7 out of 10 men said if their wives simply noticed something and said thank you, it had a big impact on their happiness of their life. If they simply noticed and said thank you, that was huge. And he's not doing it because he wants that. He's doing it because he loves you. And if there's this driven need for him to do it, because that's the question he's trying to answer, do I have what it takes? But when it's noticed, it just affirms him. And you know what it says? You do have what it takes. Because after all, that's what we want as spouses, is to tell our men that, don't we? We want them to know that. We want to build them up. We want to have that relationship with them. And this is just one of the ways you can do it. How do you say I respect a man? You say thank you. You compliment him. That was so thoughtful of you, honey, that you did that today. That was, honey, I just respect you so much. I trust you. I trust you. You know what? I trust you. You make this decision. I trust you. I fully believe in you. You make great decisions. Thank you for what you did. Ladies, if you want to tell your man you love him, treat him like that. And it's going to go so far, so much. In public, you build him up. I'm going to tell you this. My wife does this story sometimes, and I'll be honest, I love it when she tells this story. I met her at church. Someone invited her to the church that I was a part of and I was a pastor at. And I still remember the first time I saw her, actually. And she came on a Wednesday night, or it was a weeknight, or a Sunday night, and it was a different service that we set up in a different location. She came in jeans and a jean jacket. I remember that, with a polo underneath. See, baby, I never forgot. And as we got to know each other, we weren't dating, but she was a growing Christian. And so she would come up to me and say, and I think part of it was just a flirt, but the other part was she really wanted to grow as a Christian. She would ask me a question about the Bible, and I would tell her from the Bible what it said about it. And now when she tells people stuff about how to learn about the Bible, she tells people, man, my husband, before we were dating, he would say this, and he would just tell me about what the Bible said. And I didn't do anything great by that. And the way she would ask questions, that I would just lead her by telling her and referring back to the Bible, just somehow, it's not that I feel loved, that I'm being propped up or complimented. I just love that my wife thinks of me in that way. That she could go to me, that I would be a resource for her, that in some way that helped her. It's almost like just saying thank you, and that's all the guy really wants. And whenever she shares that story, I've never said this before, and I hear her say it, don't stop telling it. And I just listen to it, and my ego doesn't go I'm just man, I love that you think of me that way, honey. I love it. So when you prop up your man in public, by the way, you want to get extra points with him, don't just do it at home, do it in front of somebody. You do it in front of somebody, and he's just going to be like, whoo! You're going to make him feel awesome. He's going to be walking around all right, It demonstrates that you think of him with profound respect. Anytime we do that, if you were a boss, whenever time my boss would used to say that about me, it's like, oh, John, he's one of the best on our staff, or whatever. Oh, yeah, he's awesome at this. And do that with the people who you know. If you got people in your life that are males, if they're your sons, if they're your neighbors, you prop them up in front of other people, and man, it's going to go far. You see, when he believes that you respect him, his heart is going to feel full. And he will be drawn toward you. And then he will show you love, which is what you want, and answers your question. And you guys will have an amazing relationship. Doesn't mean it won't be without problems, but it will be an awesome relationship. Women, you actually hold incredible power. You may not think it, but think about this. After everything I shared today, think about how much power you have in the life of your man, right? If a man is looking for you for clues to understand if he has what it takes, you can either build him up or tear him down. And there's a great truth to this phrase, all right? Behind every man, right, every great man is a great woman. Because that woman believes in him, and that woman is propping him up and helping him, not propping him up, but giving him the right feedback to say, man, you have what it takes, and I believe in you, I trust in you. Listen, I'm going to share this last thing, okay? God, when he made man and woman, and then they sinned and they fell, he actually cursed the earth. And I'm going to read about this, and I want you to see something. It says, to the woman he said, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor, you will give birth to your children. Your desire will be for your husband. Leave it on the screen for a minute, and he will rule over you. Your desire, that word is this word teshuka. Teshuka. And it means desire, longing, or craving. Okay? He challenged, God says, I'm going to challenge you, ladies, at the core question that you're always asking, am I desirable? I desire my husband, but am I desirable? But he will rule over you. Go to the next slide, though, the next part of the verse. And to Adam he said, because you listened to your wife and ate fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through pain, toil, you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and it will eat the plants of your field. And you will eat the plants of your field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. So the second part, though, notice he challenges the man. If the man's question is, do I have what it takes? He goes, okay, I'm going to make it hard for you to find that question out because I'm going to make everything difficult for you to produce. Think about that for a moment. He challenges the woman at her core, and he challenges the man at his core. And you're like, God, why would you do that? Are you just being mean? I mean, think about it for a moment. Why, God? God does this so that you and I will need him. God's like, listen, okay, you guys got it all covered. Well, maybe if I just put a little tweak, you guys will go, man, I need you, God. I need you in this area. Because sometimes, ladies, when we're not feeling loved, right, we go, man, God, I need you at this moment. And guys, when we're not feeling respected and we don't have that question answered for us, we still don't have what it takes, where do we turn? Back to God. And so we're always going to have this question. He left that question unanswered for you and me so that we could find it with our spouses, but we could also find it with him more importantly. Because your relationship is nothing without God. I can give you all the best pointers and all the best tips, but if you don't have God in your life, it's not going to make a difference ultimately. He did it so that we would need him. So I'm going to close in prayer, but if maybe you haven't given your life to Christ, I'm going to give you that opportunity in just a moment. So let's pray for a moment. God, thank you so much for helping us understand each other a little better. And whether we're a man and we heard this today or a woman and we heard this today and we might feel a little bit challenged by it and we're like, well, is that really me? Or if the women are going, is that true? It's about like that for a man. Help us to receive it. God, that you created us in certain ways. Lord, we don't have to be like the other sex. We can be who we are, be comfortable in our skin, but also realize who we are. That there's a great side of each of those qualities that we've been given. A fantastic, a fabulous side. And Lord, help us to operate in that. Also, Lord, help us to recognize, though, when we're letting it get out of control in our lives. So that, God, we can have the right type of relationship with our spouses. Lord, thank you for revealing this to us today. And if you just maintain an attitude of prayer for a moment, if you today have never decided to invite Jesus into your heart, I want to give you that opportunity. Because what the Bible tells us is that we've blown it. We read that verse, and it was because of the result of us blowing it from the very beginning, and we've been blowing it every day since. That means we just did things that wasn't meant for us to do. We're stepping out of God's will at times. We call it sin. We call it missing the mark. And when we do that, it separated us from God. Just like when we're separated from our relationships with our spouses because we're angry, we're upset. And the only way to make it up with God was that it had to be paid for. And so God, who loves us so much, came down in the form of man in Jesus Christ, paid for every single sin that you and I ever made and ever will make, and said, listen, all you got to do is believe on me. And if you receive Jesus as your Lord and Savior and believe in him, he says, I'm going to take your righteousness, all those mistakes, I'm going to move them out of the way, and I'm going to give you my perfect life, my perfect righteousness, so that that's how God sees you from now on. That's what's happening when you make this prayer. And so if that's you and you want to invite Jesus into your heart today, I'm just going to ask you to repeat a prayer. It's just a way of asking him into your heart. And so we're going to do that right now. And I'm just going to ask everybody to pray it together. Lord God, I open my heart. I invite you inside to be my God, my Savior, and my friend. Forgive me of my sins. Wash me clean. I've decided today to follow you, Jesus. From this day forever, I'm yours. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Let's celebrate big, guys. If you pray.